Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Mark and we are in the shop doing part 2 of the shaker style vanity we're building for Matt from Diesel Creek. There's a lot of stuff to cover in this video. We're coming down to the finish. So we got shaker style doors, which we are going to make for the vanity. I don't order that stuff, I make that stuff. Dovetail drawer boxes. And these are made with just a router with a jig, and it does a very nice job. So you end up with a half-blind dovetail. So we will cover that in this video. All the components are sitting here for the last 2 doors. We're going to be doing drawer hardware, and these are KVs, and these are the soft close. And these are side mounts. Some people like the under mounts, but once it gets to a certain point, it gently closes the drawer. And the most important part of the job is the finish. And I prefer ML Campbell brand. I am not represented by them. I've been using this product for a year. We will be applying a sanding sealer first, and then we come over it with a clear lacquer. And this is a satin finished, and this is going to make a spectacular finish for this project. So we got a lot of stuff to cover, so let's get started on the last 2 doors and get those things done. Well, we're over at the Noisy Radio arm saw, and what I always do, mark the best side up. This will become the front of the door. We're going to be cutting these stiles first. So I trim off just a small amount. Go up to the stop. Okay, now the rails. And making the shaker style doors, I already have spacer made up, so I know when I go to my final number here, we want the doors to be 15 1/16 wide. We put the spacer block there. And we get the first piece squared up. We touch the stop block. And now we know that this is going to be the correct size when we cut the tenon and mortise on the joint here. So this is basically what's going to happen on the next machine. We're going to cut the actual parts for the door. So let me get the rest of these rails cut, and we're going to go over to the door machine. Well, this is my cabinet door machine. This is a unique 250 door machine, and not many shops have these, but when you're making your own doors, instead of running several shapers, this is the way to do it. So the way this machine is set up, we have access to the cutters up and down. There's a wheel right here that tells me what cut we will be making. So we're going to start out with the actual cope cut. And what did I do with my little scrap blocks here? Let me grab one here. And the cope cut is that guy right there. So that puts that little tongue on there. And then after we got that on, we're going to come back and do the pattern cut. So this will be the rails and stiles, how they get put together. And then once we got that done, we're going to use this machine to put a relief cut on the back of the panel. But the way it works, there's a set of clamps here that literally will hold the board in place. Down below here is where all the business end is, and it's very hard to see. It's just a hard thing to film, but that cutter head has all the cutters stacked, so whenever you want to access one, you literally run that head up and down, and then it will come down onto a stop block, and it will be aligned all the time. So it just takes all the guesswork out. So the first step we want to do is we always want to run a backup board, and I'll pull this out a little bit so you can see this. But there's a set of index stops that it puts the board in the right location with the cutter head. So we bring this up, we run it till it touches that stop block, then we run this toggle clamp down, so that way when we're making the cut, we don't blow the back side of that board out. So a backup board, even if you're running a shaper, it's really recommended to do that. Before I fire up the dust system and make all the noise, I just want to give you the walkthrough here. So what we're going to be doing, and something else I forgot to tell everybody, when I'm cutting parts for doors, I put a couple witness lines here. This is the actual saw cut. The opposite side is my jointed edge, and I want the jointed edge to be on the outside of the door because you don't have the saw marks around the outside. And then the face will always go down, and this thing will come and it will touch that block. And then we're going to do is we're going to hit the clamps. We're going to put the clamps down. That board is held securely. Then we're going to back the stops away, and this is ready to make a cut. So I'm going to fire the dust system up and just give you a little walkthrough on what is required in order to make a door. So we'll go ahead and fire it up. Okay, the parts are all cut and machined. Next step is to figure out what size is the panel going to be. So the way I do it, your case might be different, but I know if I hold my tape measure on 5/8 of an inch on the inside of this, it's telling me 10 3/4 that direction. And if we go the other direction, you just want to just dry fit the door. I'm sure you could come up with a formula that you could input, but this just seems to work good. It's kind of foolproof. So we hold that back on there, and we're coming up with 21 7/8. So we're going to cut the 2 panels down to size. We're going to go back over to the door machine, and I'm going to machine that undercut that will give it the relief to clear around the rails and stiles. And it adds a little bit more thickness to the panel. Some people just put 1/4 inch plywood in a shaker door. I don't like that idea. It makes for a really junky door. It rattles a lot. And well, anyhow, we're going to cut this down, and I'll show you what the panel looks like when it's finished, and we'll put a door together. Gives us our bottom relief, and what we're going to do is we're going to plane this all off until we're down to that surface right there, and that'll be our shaker panel. So we'll do some at the planer, some at the belt sander, and we'll be ready for assembly. All right, even though we went through the wide belt sander, you want to give it a final sanding, because this is the last opportunity we're going to get this thing as smooth as glass, because once it's put together, you won't be able to get to the edges. Okay, let's talk doors. A lot of people don't understand a lot about them. I'm going to try to get the camera in a position here where I can give you at least something of what's going on here. All right. Never, ever, ever glue a panel in a door. This is not a glue joint. Them panels have to float. And we have a product that I use. They're called space balls. And a lot of people laugh when they hear that, but here they are. If anybody has any rabbits, that's what it looks like. Looks like little rabbit turds. These are little rubber balls, and we will be putting 2 on the rails, and you space them close to the edge, and then the same thing on the stiles. And I say I got some dust in there. We don't want that in there now. So just make sure that they're up past. And what these are going to do, these are going to make sure the panel floats in this door. And you do not, like I said, never, ever, ever glue it, because that door will just push itself apart over time and it won't take long. The reason you always want to witness things where you want them, and then we know we're going to put the X's up when we're assembling this. So nothing more than just a little bit of yellow. I use the original Tight Bond glue. Get yourself a little paper plate, a little acid brush for soldering, and just squeeze a bunch in a plate here. We're going to be assembling a couple doors. We're going to be getting into drawer boxes, so I'll be using that up during the day. So I don't know where the camera's going to be the best, but I'm going to try my best for you. So what you want to do is basically, in fact, let me get my other glasses. First thing is take your time, because you get in a hurry, your work's going to look like it. So you just want to, just enough to coat it. You put too much on, it's just going to come right back out. But don't put too little. There's a happy medium for everything. Okay, so we know the X is up. We want the X out. And I always start with a corner, and I try to get it as flush as I can in the beginning, because you'll see what happens here in a minute. So we'll get this one pre-glued, and this glue gives you a little bit of time, not much. If you want to get more time, they do make slow set glues. Usually the white glue will give you more time than the yellow glue, but I'm after strength here. Basically, this is nothing more than a 10 mortise joint. It's going to hold that door together. I've never had one come apart, and we don't want one to come apart. Okay, now the panel. Again, we put the X, that's going to be the front of the door. We want the flat side towards the front, and that's the relief for the back. The reason I do this is this gives me a 1/2 inch thick door panel. When I sell cabinets, I'm not selling junk. I do see a lot of people using plywood, and I don't quite agree with that. So we're going to get this just started in the bottom. Again, just make sure your X's are going the right direction. And then, same thing. And we're going to try to keep the top edge here. We're going to call that the top. We're going to try to keep it as flush as possible, because that's going to be the first point we're going to clamp. So, and I'm not using protection blocks. This hard maple, you would have to really try to get it to scratch up. And I'm just going to lightly tap it with my mallet. You can use a rubber hammer, you can use whatever you like. And the bottom line is you want this as flush as possible, because this is going to be the finished size of the door. And that's looking as about as perfect as you're going to get it. That can come down just a hair. You have to play with it a little bit, but once you got one started where it's in place, then you can start bringing a little bit of tension on the bottom one, then tighten this up good, and then same thing, we're gonna just go flush. And the only thing I don't have with me is my damp rag. It is right here, and it's almost dried out, but we got a little bit of moisture left. Just want to try to get as much glue off of here as you can while you're working with it. And this bottom can come down just a hair. I'm liking it, so we're just going to let this sit in the clamps for about an hour, and then we're going to final sand them on the wide belt sander, and then random orbital, and these will be done. Well, let's talk about the drawers, the construction of the drawers. There's a lot of different ways to construct drawers. This is going to be a high-end vanity, so I like the Dovetails. It gives you something to look at. It looks good. It's very, very strong. But whatever method you like is, you can do it any way you want. But in this video, we're going to just go over Dovetails. So we want to start out with the front and back, the two sides. Everything's cut to size. You need to know from your hardware, whatever you're going to use, what the side clearance has to be between the drawer box and the actual face frame or the edges of the cabinet. In our case, it has to be 1 inch. So 22 inches, we're going to go 21 for the drawer. So we want to start out with an exploded drawer. When I mean exploded, it just starts out and all the sides fall down. I'm putting the saw cut side to the bottom, and now we're going to assign them numbers. So what we want to do is we want to know which is the inside. So we're going to make an arrow pointing to the inside of the drawer, because when you turn it back around, that'll be the inside. So we're just going to start here with number 1, and same thing here. We're going to draw the arrow pointing up, and we're going to put a number 1, and then we're going to keep coming around. 2 and 2, and again the arrow pointing to the inside of the drawer. And we're up to 3 and 3, and the arrow pointing to the inside of the drawer, and 4 and 4. So we got that all assigned. So I'm using a Porter cable. I think it's known as an Omni jig. It's a very user-friendly router jig for making dovetails, and I don't know how the camera angle is going to be here. I'm trying my best. So you're going to basically be using a handheld router, and you're going to use a little collar in the router, and I think this is a 7-degree, don't quote me, but I believe that's a 7-degree dovetail bit. And there's a whole procedure how you set the depth and get this jig actually set up so it cuts a decent dovetail. Now, the top part of this is going to be the front of the drawer and the back of the drawer. The front of the actual jig facing me, not the top, is going to be the sides. So everything with an arrow pointing out, we need to know it has to face towards me. So the inside of the box is up and out. So we're going to go to, okay, we're going to just say we're going to start with number 2 here. So we know it's facing this way. So we're going to orient it in the jig. I got to go down on this, lock it down. Okay, now. And number 2 is going to be here on this front. So again, the arrow is pointing up. Number 2 is pointing out to the edge of the jig. And there's stops. So you want to be tight to the stop. And let me see if I can get you off the camera here, off the stand here. And the whole purpose of this video isn't to get to know this actual router jig, but that little guy right there is the stop, and that's going to center this thing into the fingers here. And the same thing, you got the same thing going on there, so you want to be oriented in there. The router is going to follow these guides. So put you back up here, and as frickin' Jeep would say, put your ears on. But yeah, I want to make sure that everything's oriented. You want to make sure there's no debris stuck between the 2 pieces, because that will, and then you want to make sure this is absolutely flush there. We're tight to the side of that. Double check that. Yeah, setup's everything. You got to get it right. And I even found just marking the front of the router so that if this collar's out just a little bit, it's going to be in the same orientation. We're going to start out, we're going to make a climb cut across it, which means feeding the same direction as the router bit's spinning. This gives you a little bit less tear out, and then we're going to just work our way through these little fingers here. So let's get started. Go to the first hole there. And they tell you to actually let the router stop before you take it out of the jig. If you're experienced, I think you can get away with it. So basically here, we'll bring you over here. And we're going to do all, I'm not going to show you all 4 of them, but what you want to do next, you want to give light sanding. And something else I forgot to mention is we did not use hard maple on the drawer boxes. This is actually soft maple. But there you go, that's your finished dovetail. And next step after we get this done, we're going to cut a slot in the bottom to receive the drawer bottom. So we'll do that next, and we'll go ahead and get this thing ready to put together. Okay, all we're going to do is cut a slot in the bottom of the drawer to receive the bottom. And you want to make sure that that blade is below the height of that pin. And you want your inside the box pointing down and against the fence. So we're going to do this in 2 passes. You could put a dado head in if you want, but that would be a lot of messing around. But if you had a full stack of drawers, it might be worth it. And what I'm going to do is grab just a piece of scrap. And we're going to move over about a heavy 16th. And we're going to see how that plywood fits in there. And I'd say that's pretty good. You don't want it too tight, but you don't want it in there flapping. So we're just going to go ahead and run these. And we'll go over and glue them up. All right, we're going to assemble the drawers, or the drawer we just built. So anyhow, same things we did with the door. Just get the old little acid brush out and just coat the pins. And there's so much glue surface, you don't have to get this really crazy with a bunch of glue, but you want at least a little bit of glue on each pin. And this takes a minute. But you won't be sorry you did a dovetail. See, they just have so much holding power. Very strong drawer. Back in the day, there wasn't no good mechanical drawer runners, so the drawers had to rely on basically friction slides, and when you'd load up a drawer with a bunch of weight in it and start pulling on the front, you could really break a drawer. You could just ruin it. So when they come out with the mechanical drawer runners, they're effortless. You can put a 100-pound load in a drawer and move it with a finger. And drawer construction dramatically changed. A lot of people I've seen people using pocket holes, and it's acceptable. And this is the same as a door. You do not want to glue the panel, or the bottom rather. So anyhow, set this down to number 1, and I just made a mess there. I'm gonna get my rag. And the soft maple it'll get a nice finish on it. So we're just gonna slide these down over it. Number 2. And the bottom. And this is nothing more than a 1/4 inch maple plywood. Okay, then we're going to do the same thing with the top here, gluing it up. And once we get done doing this, we're going to stick it in some clamps and just let it dry. So, okay, it's time to put a finish on this, and we're going to be staining this hard maple. Hard maple is not a very easy wood to stain. It tries to be real splotchy, but that's what the customer wants, and that's what they're going to get. I had the stain mixed up. This is ML Campbell, their wood song, and this finish here matches what Matt picked. Was a Minwax number, and they can match most of the Minwax numbers. And I like this commercial stain because it dries in 1 hour, and you can start putting top coats on it as far as your sanding sealer and lacquers, and it performs much better. All you're really going to need is, all I use is a rag, little acid brush you want to get in around the edges, and so really staining is just take your time, and also most important thing is keep stirring the can up, because this stuff will settle out and then your stain will not have the same consistency to it. So basically all we're going to do here is with this little brush here, we're just going to go around where the panel goes in. You don't want to get a ton on here, because when you go to start spraying it and moving the door around, if you get too much under there, it will not dry, and then it'll come seeping out later at a very inopportune time. Let me guarantee you that. So just where the panel goes in, that's always what I like to get first. And again, if you're in a hurry, don't stain, because you're going to find you think you wouldn't miss a little spot, and it's so easy to do. So once we get the edges in, this is the back side of the door, by the way. I'm going to put my little cheaters on just so I don't get nothing splash my eye, but it helps me see a little bit better too. So basically you want to have a rag that one area is wetter than the other, and the more you stain, the better that rag will perform. And this commercial stain is very, very hard to really mess up with. It likes to stay very consistent, and if you just put just say for example, we put a splotch right here and we didn't come back to it for 10 minutes, that'll all even out perfectly. If you try this with certain stains, you're going to have a nightmare on your hands. So basically, the most important part is where you put panels in. They're the easiest places to miss. And there's nothing worse than you're all done and you start spraying the sanding sealer on. Then when you get under the lights on the spray table and you spot that little bit of wood that is not covered, there was a little bit of a tear out, but that's why everything ended up. Anytime you want to hide any imperfections, put it on the back of a door, inside of a drawer box, back of a drawer box. You can hide imperfections. you don't have to throw away a board. And you can see what the maple does. Some of it, because this is two boards here. This was glued up. One is going to stain a little bit darker than the other, and there's really nothing you can do about it. It's just the way Mother Nature made this wood. So get one spot nice and wet and just work your way around it. And while you're at it, this is a good time to get all the way around your edges and let them set up a little bit. Because when you're handling this, staining is probably one of my least favorite parts. I don't mind spraying the lacquers. It's still a lot of work, but staining is just something I never like painting neither. But it needs done. So yeah, just work your way around it, and then we'll come in here at the very end. We'll blend it all out, and we'll come around this edge one more time when we do the front. I just want to get a little base coat on it. All right. So, and if this part's boring you, you can always fast forward it until we get to the spraying portion. But anyhow, that's basically how you do it. And then also try to work with the grain. Then when you get to these transition points, sort of work into it, work away from it. And before you start staining, and you got a big project ready to stain, have a couple pieces of scrap wood that are sanded to the same degree as everything else, and test it, because once you start, you can't back out. There's no taking this back off. So basically I'm going to do the same thing on the front side of the door. We'll finish getting everything all stained up, and everything else is getting close to being done. And next time we'll be at the spray booth, and I'm going to show you how to put sanding sealer on with a pre-catalyzed lacquer and give us a really beautiful, durable finish. And then it's off to hardware, and this project is coming down the finish line. So I will talk to you here in a bit when we're ready to spray. All right, the stain is dry. So we're going to put some sanding sealer on it. And again, I use the ML Campbell, and this is what they call sanding sealer. And basically, this is your base coat for your finish. And the way it works is you spray it on, and when it dries, it's fairly rough. And you might say, wow, I just messed up a good job here. And then you sand it, and it just it turns as smooth as glass at that point. So I dedicate one of the cups to the sanding sealer and one for the top coat. Sanding sealer, we spray it full strength. So you make sure you stir up all that the solids in it. And that's basically what's going to work the magic. And then we're going to stir the can up and run everything through a paint strainer. Do yourself a favor. But some people are against sanding sealer, and some people love it. It's an extra step. It's a lot of work. But when you look at your finished product, I don't know. I think it's worth it. You're building something high end. You don't want to mess it up with a poor finish. So basically, we're just going to pour this into the cup gun, and then we're going to go over to my homemade spray booth. And you always want to have a good fan to pull the overspray out. This is a HVLP gun I'll be using. It was made by a company called Spray Cat, I believe. So anyhow, just try not to make a big mess. I know they make them clip-on things for the can, but I think will survive without it. And when we get to the actual lacquer, you can put up to 20%. They call it care reducer, and yeah, you can dilute it down to 20%. I normally run 3 ounces per cup, and this cup will hold 22 ounces. And it seems to be the perfect viscosity for what I'm doing. So basically what we're going to do is get this ready to go to the spray gun, and we'll see you over at the spray booth. Let's get some silver on these doors. All right, the sanding silver is now dry. So next step is to scuff it up with, and I'm using these 3M. These are basically foam sanding pads. They're like foam rubber, and they're real forgiving as far as when you're sanding, you don't want to break over edges and break through the stain. Then also, these are like a little like a little scouring pad, but these are real soft too, and I'll use them for getting into the edges. And then once this, see right now it's real rough, so if you run your hand across here, it's really rough. So basically we're just going to go around it with this little sanding pad. Try not to roll over the edge, keep your fingers flat, and it's all technique. But now it is smooth as glass, and it don't take much. And when you have sanding silver, you notice you get a white dust. So again, just try to keep your, and it doesn't really matter if you go with the grain or against the grain because everything is sealed in. So we're gonna just scuff this whole door up. And I don't want to get too far involved in this. This part of the video could last forever too. And then just get in there with this little scouring pad, and all this becomes just smooth as glass too. But the finish is the most important part. You can do the nicest woodwork, but if you mess up on the finish, you just ruin the whole project. So this is the back side of the door. And here's the business end of the door here, and same thing, we're just going to work around the stiles and rails, and always run your hand across it. You'll feel if it needs more or not, and don't break through the finish. When I was 12 years old, that was my job for an old cabinet maker, is sanding the sanding silver. So once we get to the panel, here's where you got to really be careful on the edges. So once you get into the edge, just work this down along the edges, because you don't want it to be rough at the edge of the panel. That's about the trickiest part. And then we get in here with this thing again, and I try to do is get a new corner, and you just very carefully, again, try not to break over that little edge. But we want to get this little this little edge here. Some people use steel wool. I found steel wool sometimes can make a bunch of debris. It's sometimes hard to get rid of. So basically, we're pretty much done there. Then we're going to go over to the spray booth, and I'm going to just turn the fan on. I got a blowgun and a tack rag, and we will just clean them off, and we're ready to start spraying the top coat. So that's what you're going to see next. Okay, it's time to start with some top coat here, and we're going to be using this Magnamax. It's made by ML Campbell. It's just a clear satin base. So the most important thing is to stir up all the solids in the can. And once you get this good and stirred up, I've been stirring on it so it's good and mixed up. This is the cup gun I was using the other day, and I use these little plastic shot glasses. They're 2 ounces, and we're going to add this care reducer. You can go anywhere from 10 up to 20%. So we're just going to put 2 ounces in here for now because this has already been added to. So yeah, just a shot more. And I put that to the bottom of the gun because we're gonna start stirring that up into this container so that as we add, if you put it on the top, you have a heck of a time getting it to mix in. And you can see how cloudy that got. So we got all the solids mixed up there. So we're gonna get a strainer. Always recommend a paint strainer. I don't know what the microns are on here, but you just don't want nothing getting in that gun while you're trying to spray. And we'll fill the cup gun up here. Mix this in as we go, and we're going to be ready to start shooting some finish. So I'll see you over at the spray booth here in a couple of minutes. All right, we're going to get on to doing some drawer installation. So now that everything is completely done, I use a side mount soft close drawer runner made by KV. And what it does is when the drawer comes into a certain point, and it brings it back nice and soft. That has become more or less a standard thing today. So you'll have to just trip that manually, and then on the drawer runners themselves, there's a back mounting plate, so they just clip in, and then this drawer, the runner will slide back until it's at the proper depth. So you want to start prepping them. You want to pull this piece out. There's the release, and now this part goes on the drawer box, and this part here is going to go into the cabinet. Simple as that. Then the way I found the easiest way to line these up is basically get yourself a piece of scrap 3/4 inch plywood, and my compressor, that's its cycle. It does every 30 minutes, it dumps the water off. Basically just get a pencil, make a good line that you can see, Because when you got lacquer sprayed on here, it's kind of hard for it to make a good line. Basically just mark this, both sides. Now, when we place the runner, and look at your drawer boxes, because sometimes you get a little tiny bit of tear out with the dovetail, and I always try to put everything like that to the back. And that's just the way that works out. So you're going to pick, just say this is going to be the front. We're going to put this runner on here, and I use about 4 screws. These are they're actually for the drawers. They're 5/8. They got a little pan head, and I believe they're number 6. And basically, they're slots that can adjust back and forth. I try to use those, and then I use a couple. So I use about 4 total. And I'm not going to bore you with this too much, but basically, just get a screw. Before you snug it down, get yourself a block of wood and make sure there's no scrap on there. Bring it until that runner is absolutely flush with the face of the box, and we'll run the remaining screws in. So that is the cabinet, or the drawer part. We got 2 more to put in another side. So we'll go over to the cabinet itself. And it's kind of hard to film stuff like this, but we're going to try our best here. So what I do in the cabinet, in fact, let me get a couple screws. One of these brackets, or runners. So I start to build a stack of drawers. I go down to the very bottom, put the first drawer in, and then as I come up, this is a piece of 3-inch wide plywood. I set it right on the drawer box. I got another piece right here that sits on the front of the drawer box. Just put your runner in place, and at this point is when you're going to push it back into that bracket until it becomes flush with the face frame. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run, I got to go just a hair more. That's perfect. We're going to run a screw in the front. We're going to run 1 screw in the back there, and we're going to leave it slightly loose, because when we put the drawer box in, we're going to have to align it so that it sits flush with the front and everything works properly. So I'm going to go ahead and just stick them couple screws in. When I come back, I'll show you how the drawer goes in and how we can adjust it slightly. All right, let's see how this works. The last drawer for the vanity. This is it, the final push here. And if you take your time, take good measurements. And that's something else I forgot to mention. Before you build your drawer box, make sure you know the specs of the hardware, because most of them give you about 1 inch to 1 1/16 inches total. So if this is 22 inches, the box should be right around 21. So I'm just making sure that everything's going to engage correctly. We're going to push it back until it engages in that lock in the back. And I can see already we're going to have to do some adjustment. It's going to have to go just a little bit that way. That's why I leave these screws in the back a little bit loose, so we can easily manipulate this to where we want it to be. And I just use a regular Phillips screwdriver, handheld, just instead of a screw gun. And you'll just keep playing with this thing until it literally sits back where you want it. And that takes a minute or 2. We're almost there. Yeah, it didn't lock into the... Yeah, they will not work until they grab that mechanism. Now, it looks pretty good, so let's get a drawer front. And look how pretty that is, a mineral streak in that maple. You just set it in there. And what I do is I push it to one side, it should be flush with the face of the cabinet. Go to the other side, it should be flush with the face of the cabinet. In this case, it's perfect. And we're going to go ahead and lock everything down. And waiting for the handles to come, I'll drill the hole through the face of the drawer front. And then I space it. I'll show you how I got a little trick how to do the spacing on this so it works out perfect. So next step is we're going to, I'll just take you over here. We're going to get into hanging the 2 remaining doors. And I use a soft close hinge. And it's all hidden hinges. So I'm going to show you how I drill the holes. And it's nice and quiet when it closes. So let's get these 2 remaining doors done. Let's get moving on that. Okay, I'm over here at the other door machine here. This is a Bloom hinge machine. It has a head in it that has 3 drill bits. One is the 35mm cup hole, and the other one does the other 2 are the pilot holes. It's equipped with 2 stops that the door is going to butt against. So we're going to start here, making sure it's tight to the fence, against the stop. Make sure there's no shavings in there because that will ruin your positioning where the hinge needs to be. So basically the way it works, it's going to cycle down. There's air clamps that hold the door down. It's going to drill the 3 holes and then it will retract, and I'll show you this how fast it works. So we have drilled the 3 holes, and what this does is it keeps the hinge straight in line with the door because it puts some other pilot holes in for you. This is also capable to actually mount the hinge on this, and the machine would stamp it in, but you have to have hinges that have a dowel on it. Let me see if I have one here to show you. And I do. This is what they call a dowel, and this is set up. You'd have to have that set up for a 5mm, I believe. I'm not positive. It might be an 8mm, but it's a different size bit. These guys get pushed into the door, and that's another way to do them. I prefer just to put them in myself. So, but there's all kinds of options of hinges. Okay, so again, nice and tight to the fence, no debris. Let's drill the hole. And there you go. Let's go over to the workbench, mount the hinges, and show you how I install it in the cabinet. All right, this is pretty simple how this works. Now, the one hinge is going to be the soft close hinge, and it comes real nice and easy. These doors are really too small to have 2 of these on there. So one hinge is going to be just a regular spring-loaded hinge, and it snaps back real fast. So I tend to put those on the bottom, and this door is going to sit in the cabinet the way we're looking at. This will be the top. And I'll put the soft close hinge on the top. So you can mix them up. If you got a big door, then you'd run the soft close top and bottom. You got to sort of experiment yourself. We're just going to use a regular these little hinge screws, and just hold them in the door. Oh, this isn't going to work with these screws. I grab the ones that come out of the dowel. It's all detail. You got to pay attention to little details. And these are just a number 6, just a flathead screw. And that hole that it drills is, I'm going to say, a 2 or 3mm hole that this little tiny hole is. But you don't want to over torque these. And I don't know if I still have this scrap piece of wood on the bench. I'll show you here. When you're setting up to drill, I don't care if you're drilling it with a hand drill with a stop, or whatever you're using. Here's what I always do when I set up the machine to drill. And it's all little tricks like this. So when you put this hinge in here, I don't know how that camera angle is, but it shows you the bottom of the hinge should have just a slight amount of clearance. You don't want the hinge sticking out, nor do you want this so deep that you're going to weaken the face of the door. But yeah, just get your depth set correctly, cut your piece of wood in half, and now you can look and see exactly how deep it is. So the next step will be going to the cabinet. And these are the mounting plates that go into the wall of the cabinet. Now, to position them, I make just a little cheat stick here because the machine's pretty darn accurate. So what I'll do is I'll set this to the center of the hinge, and then I have a little pieces of scrap around here. There's so much stuff laying around here, but it tells me how much I want the door to be inset. So I've marked the top. So this right here shows me that that's going to be dead center of that hinge. This shows me here it's going to be dead center of this hinge. And I put this in the cabinet. We're going to mark that mark into the cabinet. That's the center line. And I made myself a little homemade jig. It follows the center line, gives you the holes for the mounting plates. So just little things like this can really make your job more accurate and speed it up. So let's go put this in the cabinet and see how it performs. Well, you're inside the cabinet now. So I had laid out the two locations with that little story pull I made. And the way this works is I put a score with just a razor knife. And with that score, now you have an indicator. And when you line it up on that line, you just basically get a pencil. You trace the holes that you're going to use. In this case, this would do a 3-hole mounting bracket. We do need the mounting bracket. And there is a front and a back. Make sure you orient the part that needs to be out front so it's out front. When you go to hang the door, you will have problems. So what I do is I just get the screw. You could punch this. But if you hold a screw on the dead center of that hole, that way it's not going to walk everywhere. Or you could get a little drill bit and probably use it with that jig, but eventually it would just wear that hole out. There we go. We got that in place. And if everything worked right, the door will hang, so we'll go get the door and give it a try. All right, let's give this a try. So start with your top hinge, click it into place, and get on the bottom, click it in place, and guess what? It worked. And there's a bunch of adjustment on here. So what we can do is we can bring that up and down. If I can find my screwdriver. So this got to come up a little bit. So inside of the hinge plate, there is, I got to get this locked. There we go. We can bring it up and do it equal. And that's just about perfect where it's at. And then there's also adjustments that run the hinge in and out. And then there's adjustment that brings it left and right. So you can do all kinds of adjustments on these. So we're going to get the other door hung, and we'll see you in a minute. Well, we finally got the handles and knobs, so I'm going to show you how I attach a drawer front. Pretty foolproof method I use. So first step here, and if I can get you in on the shot here, is the question. I spend a couple minutes and make a masonite template. So it's 1/8" masonite. The particular handles we're using, very nice. I like them. They're going to look really nice on this thing when it's all finished. These are 8 inches on center. So you make a template up and make sure everything is perfectly centered. You don't want a handle on a drawer front that's crooked. That's a no-no. So basically, we're just going to mark the holes with the template here. And now we know that that thing is going to be straight. So we're going to just drill through and try to just ream them out a little bit, because we're going to have to be able to adjust. We'll have to adjust this thing when it's done. So the next step here is try to get you into the shot here, and sorry about the camera, but I try. So next step is to get this thing centered in the opening. And the best thing that I had found is nothing more than my business cards. And basically, you want to put as many in until they're nice and snug there. And then we're going to count them. Okay, there's a dozen, so we're going to go 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we're going to set them underneath the drawer front. And then I know the sides, we're using 8 and 8. The sides had a little bit more clearance on them. So we're going to, it's going to be a little snug there. We'll just take, you want it to be snug though. You don't want it to be loose. So now we're good there. We're going to grab the other packs from here. And you want to hold that so it don't slide up. And what I'll do is just put one in the center just to tighten it up a little bit. Now we know that drawer front is centered, so it really can't move. So then we're going to get our drill that we just used, and we're going to go all the way through to the drawer box. And again, we want to make it just a little bit loose. Since we're on the top drawer, it's to our advantage now. We don't have to take this thing out. So from the back side, let me see if I can get you up on the vanity here somewhere. From the inside, I'm going to have to do a little bit of countersink work. And let me just set the camera right back up on the workbench here. And you can sort of follow what I'm going to do here. The screws that came with the drawer fronts are just a hair too short. So instead of trying to find longer screws, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go on the other side and I'm going to just countersink that, and that'll get me the length I need. So now that I don't have to take that thing out of here, all right, now we're going to attach the front to it with the handle. And then I had drilled other holes through the drawers a little bit bigger. I use a 1/4-inch bit. These are drawer front screws, and they got a big washer on the back side, and that is so you can adjust the drawer front perfectly. So once we get these handles attached where everything stays without the cards, then we'll send them locking screws back. And it's just so much easier just to make a quick jig, and then when you eye the handles up, everything's perfect. Okay, it's nice and snug. So now we're going to go ahead and pull pull the cards out and just visually look at this. And if you have to adjust it now, you still can. And I got to come up just a hair here. There it goes. And then we're going to send them locking screws in through the drawer front here. So they're nothing more than a washer head screw. And again, I use 1/4 inch holes. That way, when you install it, you might have to adjust it. And that's usually pretty common. So, and I also use the runner I showed you is the soft close option on it. And there it is. There's one finished part. And all I got left now is 3 more drawer fronts, and we can call this project complete. So I'll be with you here when I finish the other side. Well, this concludes part 2 of the vanity build. And I think all in all, it turned out beautiful. They did a good job on selecting the hardware. Just a nice simple knob on the doors. We got the soft close feature on the doors. And same thing on the drawers. When they get into a certain point, they nice and soft close on it. The finish, I wasn't a big fan of staining the maple, but all in all, it turned out really good. Maple's very hard wood to stain. It likes to stain kind of splotchy, and it really looks pretty darn good for, you know, staining it dark. But anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was kind of long, but I try to make my videos very informative, and this way, if you wanted to build a vanity, I think with all this knowledge, you can probably build something pretty darn nice with some basic tools. Just take your time, and everything turns out better if you don't rush it. So do me a favor, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. And I got a lot more videos coming your way as far as the shop videos, all kind of different content. So thanks again, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.